My Brother Sam is Dead by James Lincoln Collier, Chapter 2. My father's name was Eli Flat, but everybody called him Life. My mother's name was Susanna. Father was born in Reading, where we have our tavern, but mother was born over in New York. He had cousins over there where she used to live. Their names were Platt, which used to be mother's name. I never met them, but when father went over to Verplank's Point every year to sell cattle and buy supplies, he stayed with them and caught up on the news. Reading wasn't much of a town compared with places like New Haven, although actually I'd never been to New Haven. About the only big place I'd ever been was Fairfield, down on Long Island Sound, where I used to go sometimes with Father and Sam to pick up sugar or rum that came up from the Barbados in big ships. There were thousands of people in Fairfield, at least it seemed like that, but there were only a few hundred in Reading. Reading was divided into two parts, Reading Center and Reading Ridge, which was where we lived. Our tavern was at a corner where the Danbury Fairfield Road met Cross Highway. Across the Danbury Fairfield Road from us was the church and the graveyard. Next to the church on the other side of Cross Highway was an empty field where the train band practiced drilling. Next door to us was the Beats house, and scattered around were a dozen more houses, the Sanford's house, and the Rogers house, and Mr. Heron's house, and some others. Our tavern was finished with shingles, but some of the richer people, like Mr. Heron, had white clapboard siding on their homes. Our church in Reading Ridge was the Anglican Church. Anglican meant English church. In England, everybody had to belong to it, or at least they were supposed to. In Connecticut, we had freedom of religion, so you could belong to any church you wanted, unless you were a Papist, but there were hardly any of them in Connecticut. Over at Reading Center, there was a Presbyterian church. Naturally, if you were a Presbyterian, you built your house over there. And if you were Anglican, you built here on the ridge. Although, of course, there were lots of farmers all around who didn't live near either church and just went to the one they wanted. Because our church was the English church, the people here on the ridge seemed to be more on the Tory side and wanted to be loyal to the king. To tell you the truth, I didn't exactly understand what the argument was all about. Ever since I could remember, all my life, in fact, there had been these discussions and arguments and debates about whether we ought to obey His Majesty's government or whether we should rebel. What kept confusing me about it was that the argument didn't have two sides, the way an argument should, but about 6 sides. Some people said that the king was the king, and that was that, and we ought to do what he said. Other people said that men were supposed to be free to govern themselves, and we should rebel and drive the lobsterbacks out altogether. Some others said, well, they were born English, and they wanted to die Englishmen, but that the colonies sought to have more say in their government, and that maybe we'd have to give the lobsterbacks a taste of blood just to show the king that we meant business. Oh, people had all kinds of ideas, that we New Englanders ought to join together, or that all the colonies ought to set up one big government, or that, well, I don't know. I can't even remember all the different sides there were to the argument. You could see how confusing it was when you realized that sometimes Sam's side was called patriots, and sometimes they were called rebels. I guess I've been reading newspaper stories about it and hearing people shout over the whole thing for so long that I didn't listen anymore. It went in one ear and out the other. But now it seemed like it wasn't going to be just arguments anymore. Around 50 of the Minutemen and lots of British troops had been killed on Friday at Lexington or Concord or wherever it was, although nobody seemed to know how many for sure, and Sam was going to fight. Sunday morning was bright and sunny and warm. The rain had stopped during the night. Although that road was full of mud, the fields were drying and the birds were singing. I couldn't enjoy it very much, though. The fight Sam had had with Father the night before still hung around me the way a bad dream does sometimes. Sam and Father had had fights before, and they always got over them in a day or two, but this one seemed worse than the others, and it worried me that maybe they wouldn't fix it up. I didn't think Father would want to talk about it. Usually when something important happened, he would just ignore it until he decided what to do. So I was surprised that he brought it up when we were getting ready to go to church. Tim, did Sam say anything to you about going to war? I didn't want to lie to Father, but I didn't want to give Sam away either. Well, he said he was, but I thought he was probably just boasting. He wasn't boasting, Tim. He's going over to Wethersfield. The fools are planning to march up to Massachusetts to meddle in something that isn't their affair. Is he really going to fight, Father? I hope not, he said. Then he frowned. What do you think of all this, Tim? I don't know, Father, I said. I can't figure out exactly what it's about. I suppose Sam's been preaching rebellion to you. I tried to think of something that wouldn't get Sam in any more trouble. He said we ought to be free. That's just college boy wind, Father said. He sounded pretty scornful. Who isn't free? Aren't we free? The whole argument is over a few taxes that hardly amount to anything for most people. What's the use of principles if you have to be dead to keep them? We're Englishmen, Timmy. Of course, there are injustices. There are always injustices. That's the way of God's world. But you never get rid of injustices by fighting. Look at Europe. They've had one war after another for hundreds of years, and show me where anything ever got any better for them. Well, let's go to church. It's time for prayer. I decided to forget about the whole thing. It was too worrying. We went out across the muddy road to church, and I climbed up into the balcony where the children, Indians, and black people sat. Redding Ridge being a small place, I knew everybody there, all the kids, and Tom Worrups, and Ned, the Star's black man. I sat down next to Jerry Sanford. Jerry was a couple of years younger than me, but he was the person closest to my age around, and we did a lot of things together. And the first thing he said was, "We heard Sam ran away to fight." Nobody was going to let me forget about it, that was sure. Mr. Beach made it the subject of his sermon. He really got wound up on it, too. He said that our first duty was to God, but that our Lord Jesus Christ had said, "Render therefore unto Caesar the things that which are Caesar's." And that meant we were supposed to be loyal Englishmen. He said that hot-tempered young men who listened not to the voices of their elders would bring a wrathy God down on their heads. He said that the Bible commanded youth to honor their fathers, which made me pretty nervous for Sam, because it was a sin to shout at your father the way he had done, and maybe God would punish him for it. I don't think that God would strike him down with a bolt of lightning or anything like that. I knew that God could shoot bolts of lightning if he wanted to, but I didn't believe that he ever did. What worried me was that maybe God would punish him by getting him bayoneted by a lobsterback. I knew that God did things like that because I saw it happen once. A farmer from the center came down here one Sunday very drunk and rode his horse through the burying ground. And when Mr. Beach told him to get out, he told Mr. Beach to go to hell and started to gallop his horse at Mr. Beach. But before the horse got more than 2 or 3 paces, he tripped on a headstone, and the farmer fell off and broke his neck, and he was dead a minute later. It's a true story. There were scores of witnesses. So I knew that God could get Sam if he wanted to, and between worrying about that and being confused over which side was right, I couldn't concentrate on church much. I just wanted to get out of there, but Mr. Beach always preached at least an hour, and being fired up about the Lexington battle, he went on longer. Fortunately, he always had to get back to Newtown to conduct service there in the afternoons, so finally he had to stop. And we finished up the service, and I breathed a sigh of relief and got up and started to file toward the stairs. I was nearly there when somebody touched me on the arm, and I turned around. It was Tom Worrups. Tom didn't look much like an Indian. He wore the same kind of brown shirt and trousers any farmer around Redding wore, and he spoke pretty good English. "Hello, Tom," I said. He didn't say anything, but he clutched me by the arm and sort of held me back while the others filed past us down the balcony steps. Then he said in a low voice, "If I tell you where Sam is, you don't tell nobody." He looked at me hard and squeezed my arm, not enough to hurt, but enough so I knew he could hurt me if he wanted. "Is he up at your place, Tom?" "You don't tell nobody, Timmy. You get Tom in trouble." "I won't tell Tom. I wouldn't either." Tom scared me. He let go of my arm, turned, and went down the stairs. I came along behind him. My parents were standing out in front of the church, talking to people. It was always the same. Church was practically the only time we ever saw some of the farmers from further out in the parish. Places like Ompagwag, they wanted to keep up with the news, and Father always spent some time with them. It was good business, Father said, to be cordial with people. I knew they wanted me to stand around and be cordial too, so I did. But mostly Jerry Sanford and I threw little stones at each other until Father caught us and made us stop. I was impatient to go see Sam, but of course I had to pretend I wasn't in any hurry to go anywhere, and the talk dragged on, all about the war and what might happen. Finally, my parents got done talking and we started across the street. "Father," I said, "Jerry Sanford wants me to help him carry up a big log from the woodlot." "That's breaking the Sabbath," he said. "Well, it won't take very long." He just shrugged. I guess he had too many other worries on his mind to get upset about that. So instead of going into the tavern, I turned and went up the road to the Sanford's house. As soon as I got past it, so nobody could see me from the tavern, I climbed over the stone wall into the Sanford's pasture and began running across the fields towards Colonel Reed's house. It was a couple miles there, going around by the roads, but by cutting across the fields I could make it in 15 minutes. Better yet, it brought me in from the rise behind the house where Tom Warup's shack was. If anyone from the Reed's house saw me go up to the Warups, they'd want to know why. I jogged along quickly. I was pretty nervous about lying to Father and about what Sam was doing, but it being such a beautiful day helped me to feel better. The sun was warm on my shoulders, birds twittered, and there was that spring smell of mud and grass in the air. I just jogged along, not thinking about anything very much, and 15 minutes later I came upon Warup's shack. It was made in the Indian way of a circle of poles stuck in the ground, with their tops bent together and tied. Covering the poles were hides and rags, and in some places patches of straw thatch. There was a thin trail of smoke coming out of the top where the poles met. The door was just a hole in the side covered with a blanket flap, but the flap had been pulled aside to let light in. I ducked down and looked through the hole. Sam was sitting on the ground with Betsy Reed, holding hands. They looked very serious. "Hello, Tim," Betsy said. "Hello," I said, slipped inside and hunkered down by the fire. The fireplace was just a circle of stones in the middle of the floor. There was a bed made of a couple of deer hides stretched across the frame, a few pots and pans, and not much else. "I can't stay very long," I told Father. I was helping Jerry Sanford move a log. "Oh, Father," he said. He sounded bitter. "I heard your fight," I said. "I'm too old for him to tell me what to do anymore," Sam said. "This morning he said you were full of college boy wind," I said. "That's because I wouldn't obey him." He picked up a stone and began jiggling it from hand to hand. "I guess he's still mad at me. He cried last night after you left, Sam. Maybe he knows something about war that you don't." Nobody said anything for a minute. I picked up a stick and began to push it into the fire to see it burn. Then Betsy Reed said, "Timmy, are you on your father's side or Sam's?" I wish she hadn't asked me that question. I didn't want to answer it. In fact, I didn't know how to answer it. "I don't understand what it's all about," I said. "It's simple," Sam said. "Either we're going to be free or we're not." Betsy touched his arm. "It isn't that simple, Sam. There's more to it." "What side is your family on, Betsy?" I asked. "Oh, we're all patriots. After all, my grandfather is head of the militia." Her grandfather was Colonel Reed. Her father was Colonel Reed's son, Salem Reed. They lived not far from Colonel Reed. "Is your grandfather going to fight the lobsterbacks?" "I don't think so," Betsy said. "He's too old. He said he would probably resign his commission to some younger man. Anyway, he doesn't think we ought to fight unless we really have to. He says There ought to be some way of working it out with the king and parliament without having to fight. There isn't any way to work it out, Sam said. The British government is determined to keep us their slaves. We're going to fight. A lot of people aren't going to fight, I said. Around here they aren't. This is Tory country. Father, Mr. Beach, the Lyons, the Couches, most of them in our church are Tories, and they think it's the same everywhere, but it isn't. Down in New Haven, they're ready to fight, and Wyndham's already marched their militia to Boston. He was being scornful. Sam always got scornful when other people disagreed with him because he always thought he was right, although to be honest, a lot of the time he was right because of being so smart. But still it was hard for me to think that Father was wrong. Sam, Father says for most people it isn't being free. It's only a few pence in taxes. That's Father for you. It's the money that counts. There are principles involved, Tim. Either you live up to your principles or you don't. And maybe you have to take a chance on getting killed. Who wants to get killed? Nobody wants to get killed, Sam said, but you should be willing to die for your principles. That's right, Betsy said. But Betsy, you don't have to take a chance on getting killed, I said. I'd fight if I could, she said. I hated arguing about it. Well, maybe the king will change his mind and get the lobsterbacks out. Sam shook his head. He won't. He thinks he's going to teach us a lesson, but we're going to teach him one. We already taught him one at Lexington. That's what I mean, I said. Maybe he'll give up now. Betsy shook her head. He won't, not according to my father. Everybody was quiet for a minute. Then Sam said, There's going to be war. Which side are you going to be on? I couldn't answer. Sam made it seem that he was right and Father was wrong, but I didn't see how I could go against Father. I didn't say anything. Tim, you could help us by keeping an ear out in the tavern. With all the Tories around Reading, there'll be lots of talk about what the lobsterbacks are up to. You could find out who the Tories are, who's on our side, and things like that. It made me nervous to think about it. I won't hear anything like that. You could be a big help, Sam said. You could be a hero. I stood up. I have to go. Father'll get suspicious. Sam got up too. Well, think about it, he said. Betsy stood up. Tim, I'll see you around the tavern if you hear anything. But I wasn't paying attention to what she said because as she stood up, the shadows shifted and the firelight fell on the wall of the hut. There was a blanket lying there as if somebody had just thrown it down. But it hadn't just been thrown down accidentally, because sticking out from one end of it was the stock of a gun. Sam, I shouted, you stole Father's brown Bess. He jerked around to look at it. Damn, he said. I didn't want you to see that. Sam, you can't take it. It's not yours. It's Father's. Shh, don't shout so loud. I have to have it, Tim. I need it to fight with. Sam, you can't take it. We need it at home. Father needs it. You don't expect me to fight without a gun, do you? He gave me a sharp look. Are you going to tell Father I'm still here? Timmy, Betsy said, you don't want your brother to get killed, do you? I stood there confused and mixed up inside. I didn't say anything. Are you going to tell? Sam said again. Sam, please don't take it. I knew I was about to cry. Please, Sam? I have to have it, Tim. Timmy, Betsy said, you don't want Sam to get killed, do you? Please, Sam. Are you going to tell? Sam said. Then I couldn't hold back any more, and I began to cry. No, I won't tell, I whispered. Goodbye. And I turned and ran out of the hut and out across the field. About halfway home, I got ashamed of myself for crying and stopped. And by the time I reached the tavern, I got my eyes back to normal, and nobody noticed.